I'm Maggie O'Halloran. I'm one of the educators at the Florida School of Holistic Living, and we're at my home here in Central Florida, where my family and I are really dedicated to making sure that if we're watering it or planting it, it's either for medicinal qualities or food, or maybe for the pollinators, but we try to be really intentional about that. And one of the plants that we really enjoy having in our front yard, it's both aesthetically pleasing and has some nice smell and offers us some medicinal values, is lemongrass. So today we're going to talk about this gorgeous plant, lemongrass, Cymbopagon citratus. It is a member of the grass family, as you may be able to tell from these beautiful grass-like leaves. It's super tolerant of Florida landscape. It grows really well in our Florida sandy soil. It's really happy with a lot of water. You can see I've planted it near the downspout on our home so that it has access to the water whenever it rains, even a little bit. But like many of your other grasses, it can also be tolerant to our dry season. So in our dry season, you can see it goes a little more dormant. It's just recently started greening up again with the rains we've been getting. I rarely ever water it. In fact, one of the things that we'll talk about in this plant are its essential oils. And if you water it, it has less of these essential oils. But it's really tolerant to our dry season. It turns a little bit brown. I feel like when it decides it's time to seed, it's actually really a beautiful plant in our landscape. A lot of people like to use it instead of a shrub. It has these beautiful seed stalks. If you've ever had Thai or Indonesian food that had lemongrass, they were referring to these stalks. So these stalks have these wonderful seeds and will make it so that lemongrass is part of your landscape and probably your neighbor's landscape for a long time. These wonderful seeds that float nicely on the wind. So I find lemongrass in my yard via the seed, so it would propagate for you in that way. But if you're thinking about using lemongrass in cooking, then it's these seed stalks that are often utilized. There are just a handful of places that you would find lemongrass in books or herbal Materia Medica. One of them is if you live in Florida, you should definitely know about. It's Monica Brandes. And Monica Brandes mentions lemongrass in this book about how to grow and enjoy Florida plants with special uses. She's one of the few writers that I knew about when I first moved to Florida about 14 years ago that was writing specifically about Florida and growing here. She talks about lemongrass being really high in essential oils. In fact, lemongrass essential oil is one of the top 10 essential oils distributed across the globe. And essential oil is one aspect of the plant. It is probably really familiar to you, this term essential oil, but it really takes a lot of plant material to access a small bottle of essential oil. So this is not really a way that I incorporate lemongrass into my life. I usually stick with the whole plant. With making an essential oil, it takes this whole process, distillation process, where a lot of plant material is put into equipment and it's extracting just the small amount of essential oil. You can see a little bit on the top of my tea here. And it's these essential oils that offer that nice scent that lemongrass has, but it can also be kind of caustic to the mucous membranes if you're incorporating lemongrass into your life. So lemongrass is one of those plants that if I am making it as a tea, I'm sure to steep it a smaller amount of time, 5 to 10 minutes. Lemongrass also has a plant constituent in it related to citronella, that wonderful bug repellent that we all, especially if you live in places with mosquitoes like Florida and Louisiana and Vermont, all the places with mosquitoes, we're using a lot of things like citronella these days with the bugs around. And I find that lemongrass does a really nice job of helping my family not get bitten as much in our front yard, because we have several lemongrass plants out here, and it's just that plant constituent that is, whenever it gets heated up and rustled with people running by and playing, it's emitted into the air, and it makes things less attractive to those insects around here. I have used lemongrass in bug repellent formulas. We have several plants here in Central Florida that are great at helping a little bit as a bug repellent. They don't work in the same way as something like DEET might, but they're a lot safer on the body. So in making a bug repellent, I would harvest plant materials, fill up a jar, and then add something in the liquid form to the jar, fill it up, that could extract the aspects of the plant that would help it be a bug repellent. So those essential oils, and specifically that citronella type constituent of lemongrass. And then after 6 weeks, I take the plant material out, and then I have a bug repellent that I can put into my own jar, my own sprayer, and use that's safe and effective for my family. Any plant that is high in essential oils, you could actually do this with. So rosemary is another plant we could do this with, or camphor if you have that invasive plant in your life. That's another one that the leaves of camphor go really well in that bug repellent. Lemongrass also contains terpenes, and terpenes are a plant constituent that have been associated with a lot of talk in recent years. There are other plants that have a lot of terpenes in them, but terpenes can help your body feel more calm. So lemongrass has been effective in protocols for depression and anxiety. I've read about it being beneficial in cases of things like high blood pressure because of the calming effect that it has. In fact, one of the essential oils in this plant, limonene, is similar to the scent that you get in the calming properties of lavender. So it has a similar effect. If I'm feeling a little stressed, I come and work in the garden, and that has all kinds of benefits on its own, but just smelling that lemongrass can really be calming and soothing. Terpenes have been connected with being anti-inflammatory, and terpenes have been related to treatments for pain and other types of inflammation. Terpenes, you may have heard about, are a plant constituent and a plant that's getting a lot more attention recently, the plant cannabis, or that it's getting a lot more attention. But lemongrass has also been associated with things like antibacterial, antifungal, antimicrobial. And because it's a plant that originated in places like southern India and Sri Lanka and more tropical regions, it has migrated and been used in other areas of the planet that are more tropical. And many of these herbal lineage are that of oral traditions. So that's probably one reason we don't see it in a lot of herb books, because many of our herb books are coming from written traditions. I found this one that I'd really like to share with you. It is Earth and Spirit Medicinal Plants and Healing Lore from Puerto Rico. In this book, the author contacts on several people that have been working with lemongrass and other plants in the region for ages, and traditions that have been passed along through those telling of stories. And in this book, the lemongrass was used for diabetes, fevers, and specifically flu. There was also a really fun story about the use of lemongrass roots for toothbrush. And I don't know if I have any other fellow outdoor adventurers out there. That part was kind of fun to think about, using that lemongrass root, not just for oral health, but to actually use it as a toothbrush. In my life, I mostly use it as a tea. It tastes delicious. It has that nice lemony flavor. It looks really pretty. But like I said, I typically only let it steep for 5 to 10 minutes because it's so high in those essential oils. So harvesting lemongrass, if you want to come over, I'll show you some more details. So harvesting lemongrass, if I'm going to use it for tea, then I would use these nice, beautiful green leaves. If I'm using it for a stir fry or adding flavor to soups or stews, I'm going to use these wonderful stalks. And you can see the difference in the stalk. Looks a little bit more like a bamboo with the sections. And to use it in soup or stew, I cut it. I might take off these outer leaves, or I might not. Break it. And some people like to just chop it and put it into their soup stock, like in sections like this. Other people like to roll it up, and it's handy because it comes with its own kitchen string where you tie it up. And before I tie it, I would pound it. So I would take the back end of my knife, or I would take the back end of my scissors. Those work really well. And I would break it. Anytime you're incorporating plants into food or teas, you want to make sure that you're giving the plant cells a little wake-up call. Say, hey, we want to access what's inside there. And so I would break it up. And if I were in my kitchen, I'd have my cutting board out, and I'd really go to town and really break up some of those, the outside that can be kind of tough. But you can see with the tapping it with the scissors, I start to open it up, and I give access to the inner parts, but it's still staying together, because I wouldn't really want to put this into my pot and then eat it. It would be kind of like eating grass, but the flavor is really lovely. My mouth's watering just thinking about that delicious soup with the lemongrass flavors in it. I would take off the seeds. I've never used seeds in my cooking. Comment below if you've ever incorporated the lemongrass seeds in any way other than growing more plant. And then you could tie it up and put it in your pot, and once your food is done cooking, you can easily take it out again. No need to strain. It comes in handy if you're doing something else that I really like to do with lemongrass, because it has this nice scent, it has this nice clearing energy to it. I will take the dried pieces. There we go. So this dries really nicely. I can fold it while it's still in the green state because it has very little water, or I can let it dry completely just to make sure, and then I can wrap it and I can use it to burn or smudge. Some people say smudge, but I just say burn plant material. And then I'm releasing those wonderful essential oils into the air. It smells really nice. It can be really nice to throw a bundle into a campfire, and then you have this bug repellent from the fire itself, but also from the lemongrass scent going into the air. It's really lovely. Growing lemongrass, I mentioned it will grow very easily from seed. Was there a question?
Ask people to comment if the video is streaming okay.
Oh, let us know how you're feeling about the streaming aspect of the video, if that's coming through okay for you. And let me know if you've ever had lemongrass in a tea blend before. It can be really nice. It's often added to other more fruity herbs like elderberry or hibiscus. I like it both cold and warm. Okay, so propagating. Lemongrass grows very easily. Once you have it, you will enjoy it for long periods of time. It's really lovely to have around. This plant we got in this little tiny pot 10 years ago when it was one of the first plants that we put into the ground when we moved into this home. And since then, this gorgeous plant has grown up, and we've cut back. A lot of people like to really heavily cut it back during the dry season and let it come back all green and fresh every year. But we have this, and then we have a volunteer. This was a volunteer. This one we did not plant. It came here floating on the wind from seed from the other one. So if you have it, your neighbors will appreciate it because you'll gift it to them as well. Makes a really lovely shrub, fast-growing, privacy or bug repellent between neighbors. It smells really good. It's next to our driveway, so I can open the car door and I can smell it. Propagating. I find that seed is one way, but another way is getting it from an existing plant. So because it's in the grass family, this root ball is not one giant root system all connected. It's a lot of roots that are spread out. And so I can take a part of this lemongrass from here and plant it in my pot without harming the rest of the plant. So you want to come over? Lemongrass can be a really nice home to your neighborhood snakes as well. We appreciate them. They take care of other...
Snake skin.
Yeah. We found a beautiful snakeskin earlier today. But I'm putting my shovel at the edge.
Do you keep what you cut back, even the dry brown pieces? If so, what do you do with it?
So there was a question, and it's a really relevant question, I think, for a lot of people, because if you're growing lemongrass, then you know that you have these wonderful root offerings that are brown, and this part is probably dormant. If I were to put this in a pot and add water, it would grow. But the question is, do you keep the brown parts of the plant? In our yard now, we have it growing so prolifically that it's really not necessary for me to utilize that part of the plant. I think it makes really nice mulch. I use the dried parts in other areas of the yard as a mulch to keep the moisture in the ground, but I don't utilize the brown parts in tea or in other internal ways of using this plant. Sometimes I'll use the brown part to make really big bundles for a campfire. That can be really nice, but in general, I don't really keep it. If I'm cutting back, so this walkway, occasionally you can see here, I cut it back pretty heavily sometimes, just so that our postal worker can walk through, because the grass can be a little bit serrated on the edge and it causes me a little bit of redness. So I don't want our postal worker to go through that. So I cut it back, and when I do that, I mostly just keep the green. And I either put the green directly into tea, or I let it dry a little bit. I cut it up so it fits in a jar, and I keep it for the future. Or if I'm making soups and things like that, I typically go with the green stalks. And I've heard of people that take the green stalks or the shoots really close to the ground, like this one, and chop them up into stir fry. I don't do a lot of that, but that again would be the really nice green shoots. And sometimes you can find lemongrass ready to go in your food at markets that have a few roots on them. And if it has a few roots there, chances are really good that you'll be able to stick it into earth and watch it grow. It smells really good. So I would just take this part, make sure I have plenty of room for those roots. Feels weird to use the shovel. Make sure that all the roots are covered, and then I would water this. I'd make sure that it was really happy for a few days until with water till the roots start growing again, and then it would be completely fine on its own, especially if I put it in the ground. It really loves growing in Florida, and it's really happy all over Florida, north, south, central Florida. If you're in Florida, it will definitely grow for you. I've had people ask me if it would grow in a pot, and I find it's happy in a pot, but if it goes dormant in a pot, like it's outside, it's in a pot, I haven't watered, and it turns brown because it's going dormant, I find that if it's in a pot, it doesn't really come back. There isn't enough of a root system for it to come back whenever the rains start coming again. So if you decide to have it in your life, and maybe you want to put it in a pot near a patio or something, so that it can be a natural bug repellent for you, make sure that you're watering during our dry season. So the resilience in the ground, whenever it's dry, is really for the plants that are in the ground. If it's in a pot, you want to keep watering it. That was a question?
Does the taste change before and after it seeds?
So there was a question, does the taste change before and after it seeds? I have not noticed a change in the flavor when I'm making tea with it, either before or after it seeds, because this plant we've had for about 10 years, and it kind of always tastes the same to me. I think after the dry season, when it's been dry for a while, and the green that's coming back, it has a stronger flavor, but I think that has to do with it emitting more of those essential oils to protect itself from attack because it's going dormant. So any plant that is not 100% needs being met is more susceptible. So whenever it's going dormant, it's going to emit more of these essential oils and have a stronger scent. Second, there's another question.
Does it need a lot of sun?
Great question. Lemongrass would definitely prefer full sun, but it's happy in part sun. I've tried to grow it in our backyard, even in the most sunny spots of our backyard, and it really prefers this great south-facing, full sun, pretty much all day. You can't tell today, it's pretty overcast, but all day sun. But it would be okay in part sun. Any more questions? These are great questions. Comment below if you have any questions or thoughts or fun ways that you like to use lemongrass, or questions about fun ways you are curious about using lemongrass. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me in my garden. It's always lovely to have you here, and I look forward to seeing you in my garden next time.